Hey, in this video, we're going to be reviewing the Yamee Fat Bear 750S Pro. So let's get started. Okay, as you will see here, the Fat Bear 750S comes 95% ready to go right out of the box. All you have to do is take off all the protective wrapping. Then what I did was adjust the handlebars and put on the display screen. I decided I wanted to put on flat out tire sealant right from the start so that I don't get any flat tires. In my area, we have a lot of thorns. Put some in the back tire first, then I put sealant in the front tire next, and then I went around the bike to make sure everything was nice and tight and correctly adjusted again. I suggest you do that to every bike that you ever get, all the nuts and bolts. Then I had to adjust the derailleur very quickly. Then the only thing I did was angle the seat a little more so that it was more comfortable, and I was ready to go. All right, so as we're walking up to the bike, here's a lot of great features we're gonna get a chance to review. And let's start off with this actually super heavy duty rack here. So it is actually, what you see on this bike is pretty much what you get. You have these fenders that are already on there, you have dual suspension, you have the solid rack on the back here. I think the only thing I gotta say that's not part of this bike would be this bag here. That's actually found on the Ebike products website that you can actually purchase. But the only thing I'm gonna start off by saying that is really lacking on this bike is a bottle cage boss holder. So it's super minimum. Everything else on this bike is absolutely amazing. Let's just start with the back of the bike, because we have, first and foremost, toward the rear of the bike is this dual suspension, and this makes a world of difference. This has to be one of the smoothest bikes I have ridden to date, and it is really an amazing ride. Even with a seat that is actually not super soft but comfortable, I will be able to ride this all day long with that seat without having to upgrade it if I didn't want to, only because of the fact that it's just so smooth. If you haven't ridden a rear suspension bike, this is something you definitely want to try and giving it a shot. The other thing we have here that really makes this bike kind of ideal is that it has a 750 watt rear hub motor, and that's nominal. With a 25 amp controller, it does have a 25 mile per hour max. And we also have this 8 gears in the back here that really make an ideal gearing for when you're riding. And connected to that is a 52 tooth chainring in the front. And this chainring is, as you can see, has a double guard on it to keep the chain from falling off, but also to protect the chain as well on there. And this large sprocket also makes it so that there's a lot less air pedaling going on when you have it in the high gear there. Talking about the gearing here, we also have the Altus derailleur back here. It is still not a super high performance shifter, but it is a good one. This is a great shifter to actually have on this bike here. It makes it really smooth. You also will see we have this really long rear fender. Attached to the fender is the rear light. So what I'm doing right now is I'm turning on the bike, and what you'll be able to see, hopefully without it being too bright, is that we have a brake light. I'm hitting the brake, and as you can see, it lights up. And if I do turn on the headlight, we have it illuminating. And so you have this tail light that also just illuminates and works as a brake light, and that is integrated. Fat Bear 750S here, and again, this is the Pro version. So you have your Pro and you also have your regular 750S. Both actually have the same motors. This controller is upgraded. A lot of improvements came with the spokes that are on the back end. Plus here you also have these folding pedals. Helps to actually make it foldable. You also have a folding mechanism here, so you can fold the bike in half, and you can potentially even stick it like in a trunk or something if you need to. Speaking of folding, we also have a folding neck, so you can bring this down here. And I like kind of the way that this mechanism works here with this folder. So let me go ahead and show you here. Lift this up, pull this down, and the front part releases, and then you'll have this folding. So the bike does fold down like this. So you get a nice low profile. So this already helps to, if you're transporting it around, or if you actually, what a lot of people don't realize is the folding part like this also helps a lot with regard to putting it in the garage. And if you don't, because the biggest width is from here to here. And with this folded all the way down, the width of the bike collapses considerably. So look how thin the bike is now from a front profile. And so if you have it in a garage, you don't have this handlebar sticking out that'll actually hit and get in the way. So I just want to point that out as well. That's one of the reasons why I love the folding mechanisms on e-bikes. And again, you just push this up. If you watch in the front here, as I lift this, this part will go in. And this is what grabs. You should notice that. And I push it in. And then with pushing that, this will lock here. It is also telescoping. So with this, you can actually open this up and you can actually bring the neck higher if you need to be taller. It does have a wide range of rider sizes, which I'll have posted here. And that's another thing I really like about this bike. I'm only 5'5", and look how high I have this post, which means I could probably bring this down another almost 6 inches. And a rider as low as I believe 5 feet should be able to ride this pretty comfortably without any problem. You might have your legs be a little crunched, but with that, you could actually bring this down. Now, this is the lowest the handlebars will go, but that works. It's actually really good. Moving a little to the front here, you also have front suspension with your lockout and your preload on this side. So you actually have really nice suspension front and back, and I haven't even gotten to some of the other benefits to this bike for the cost that you get. And let's go ahead and look at these brakes here. As you can see, 180 millimeter rotor, and these are, believe it or not, take a look here, hydraulic brakes. You can tell hydraulic brakes because it actually says mineral oil, which means that it needs oil for the hydraulic portion of it. And of course you have your other wire coming out below it, which is your cutoff switch. So this has your automatic cutoff. All right, so we got a nice view of the screen here. Let's go ahead and we can go ahead and look at our different settings that we have here. By hitting this button up and down, you have your up and down, your PAS. By holding down the power button, this will turn the bike on and off. So just hold it down for a few seconds, it shuts off. Make sure the key is turned to the on position, turn it back on here. And then you have a simple touch of the headlight. Just by pushing the button here, the headlight goes on. So because the dimming of the screen, that's why you see the flickering, which you don't see the flickering if you're not using a camera. But if you turn off the light, because it dims it so that it's not blaring in your face, turn it back off here, it's nice and bright. And this is what you kind of see when how bright it is going through this. Now, the other thing I want to go through really quickly, so by holding your I button down, you have your odometer, you have your max speed, top speed, your average, and then your time of riding, and then of course your trip odometer here. And by holding both of these together, we'll go into our settings, and you have your wheel size. And if we scroll through your speed limit, you can adjust your speed, the brightness of the screen. The different modes that you have here would be like normal mode and sport mode. See, let's go ahead and put it on sport mode. That probably is a little tuning difference on their bike too. Well, I'll have to check that out. Voltage of the battery. You don't really want to mess with something unless I'm changing the battery out. And of course you want to check with Yamee before you do anything like that. Your advanced settings, you have a whole bunch of settings you can do it so you can tune it to the way you want to. Again, I would check with Yamee, and also make sure you take a picture of all of your default settings before you ever go into stuff like this, because you don't want to have to deal with problems that you're going to have later. So let's go ahead and go back to the back down here, and then hit out. The other parts of your setting, you have your dormancy. This is how long it takes before it shuts off. Your unit of measure, if you want to go between kilometers per hour and miles per hour. You can set a password so that the bike cannot be actually started without a password set in there. Your factory settings, you can put everything back to factory setting defaults, and of course your display settings, and you can exit. And of course hitting the I button is what gets you out of your settings there. So really easy. The one thing too is this is tuned really smoothly. It has a lot of power, but even with a lot of power, I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. It doesn't kick. I mean, that's a lot of power going to the motor there. And it is a thumb throttle, so just keep that in mind as well. We do have a thumb throttle here, but it doesn't have that really jerky, scary push that happens with a lot of other bikes. They tune this very well. You can actually hit the throttle and the bike will do a slow pickup from the beginning and then start to really go. So you have the ability not to have this thing like jump out from under you, perhaps even make you fall. And I just want to keep that. That's another thing that I wanted to really make clear with this that's really nice. You also have your headlight, as you can see. Really, actually, this is a pretty nice size headlight, and I really do like that as well. And you have your big, huge 20 by 4 inch fat tires on here. These are the CST BFTs, great tires. Now, inside here, we have a 15 amp hour battery. That's a nice size battery. They're saying it goes up to almost 60 miles, maybe even up to 80. That's in ideal conditions. I gotta admit, I don't know if this bike will actually be able to do 60 to 80 miles, but what's really cool about this is you will be able to see something on our ride, and I'm going to point this out again on the ride itself here, but there's a little wattage that's here, okay? So if I hit the wattage, you see that it actually pushes up, but when you hit the brake, did you see that go to negative? Let me go ahead and do that again. There is a regen. So what happened is when I hit the brake, it actually kicks the regen on. If you hear, listen for the motor, hopefully you can hear this. But when you hear me hitting this, this is actually the front brake that I'm hitting. But if you hear the motor stopping in the back, it's because these brakes actually run a regen braking system that actually puts power back into the battery when you hit the brakes. And what happens is the motor, you actually will hear the motor, it sounds like it's turning back on when you hit the brake, but what it's doing is the brake is actually engaging the motor to take the kinetic energy back into the battery so you get charged back up. So like if you're rolling down a hill and you're kind of hitting your brakes as you're rolling down, what starts to happen is it actually puts power back into the battery. And that's actually just something pretty darn awesome. Now, I've heard from others that are talking about regeneration, not to think it's going to recharge your whole bike, but it actually does help to sustain a longer ride in a small way, maybe about 8% efficiency back into the battery itself. So not a huge amount, but it depends on how you're riding it. And if you are riding home, you can actually, before you if you're going downhill, you can maybe get a little more juice before if you're running out of battery going in there. And again, this is our air suspension ride mid shock that actually helps with the rear suspension together here. The other thing I want to point out is that this key needs to be in when you're riding. And I'm going to actually open this up here. This is our center hold here. So this is what holds in the battery itself. If you turn it once, it is in an off position, the key comes out. The battery is still locked in. This is actually a locking mechanism for the battery itself. If you stick this key in fact, let's see if I can actually get a view of the key in there. If you stick it in the keyhole that you're seeing here, then, and we turn it all the way, you push in and turn it, then you'll notice that the pin has gone into the bike. And that when the bike is unfolded, will allow you to take out the battery. So at this point, you can take it out, and the battery is pretty much locked into the frame itself. Even if the bike is unfolded, it is locked in the frame. And this is from there, if you turn it one more time, pin still stays out, and the battery is now engaged for power. And then you can then move up here and hit your power button, and this will turn on the screen there. And it boots up. And then we're going to go ahead, you can actually do that. Again, it does have a thumb throttle. Let me go ahead and lock this back up before I forget. Nice cable management with a zipper up. That's pretty. It really makes it add a little nice look to it. Having it all put together in one area. Cable management is really nice. It does go through the bottom of the frame, as you can see here. There's a little holder that is not all the way inside, so if you do need to do maintenance, you can. Easy to go ahead and get that out here. I also did want to point out, you do have another 180 millimeter disc rotor here with your hydraulic brakes. I'm not familiar with the brand Fast Ace. They work great. You can stop on a dime. One thing I did notice about the Fat Bear, again, not a huge disadvantage, but I did like to say that the clearance, this is about 3 inches from the ground, maybe 2 inches. So you have to be a little worried. You do have cranks that are longer, and it can give you pedal strike if you have your pedal leaning that way. In fact, the bike is leaning, so just keep in mind as well too. But I did notice, I do feel as though the pedals are lower than usual. Let's go ahead and look at full grips. They're really soft, really comfortable. They do have it, and they are locking grips. So you do have your screws here to keep them from spinning on both sides here. I will be actually adding mirrors that come in here, put to this bike. I like the way that they actually have these where these pop off and you can put bar end mirrors. You could use mirrors that will come up here and then actually come off to the side, but because there's not a lot of handlebar accessory space, very little, it would be probably better to have bar end mirrors put here. Now, a lot of people will wonder why don't they have a twist throttle? And one of the reasons being is that they also have this type of, it's paddle shifters. And I really like this a lot better because I don't have to bring my thumb up. You can actually just push back and forth, you know, and this can go multiple gears at one time, and then this just brings it back down. So you can click up and then click back down, click up, click back down. Or if you want to go multiple gears, you can go 2, and then this will bring it step down. So this goes to your low gear and your high gear here. And it's you know, really clear to see as you're doing up and down. And they work really well. With the Altus shifter in the back there, they just smoothly go up and down. So that's another thing that, the reason why you have this here is that if you have a throttle, it takes up a ton of space. That extra space that gets taken up on the sides here, it won't work out very well for you. So if you want a better shifter, what they do is e-bike companies will put a thumb throttle here. So a lot of high performance bikes do have a thumb throttle here if they want paddle shifters like this here. I have not seen a bike that has a twist throttle and a thumb at the same time, paddle shifting like this, that hasn't had really a lot of space issues where you're reaching all over the place. So, you know, some people might say they don't like a thumb throttle, but to be honest, I have never had a problem shifting over very quickly as needed. The paddle shifters, and this has not become actually more convenient just the way it is. If you like that, it is a kind of a better performance, honestly. And honestly, it, again, a safety factor, because when you're shifting here, your thumb is still left on a position that if you need to come to a stop, it's still holding here. Otherwise, you could slip off and it could just slide off that way. A really minor thing, depending on, you know, what your style of riding is, but for the most part, I personally don't have an issue with it, and I actually love just the whole performance of it. Switching between bikes, it's an easy switch. It really is. Just because you're used to one, it's not going to be hard to move to the other. Okay, so I got the bike a little turned around now so we can get the other side with some nice lighting. One other thing I want to point out as well is that we do have a little port here where you can charge the bike while the battery is in the bike itself. This just unplugs, stick in your charger, and not to mention, it does come with a 3 amp fast charger. That's another upgrade that the Pro has. Like the other versions used to come with a 2 amp charger. Now this has a 3 amp, which means it's actually 30% faster in charging. So you're looking at a 4 or 5 hour charge time max with a 15 amp hour battery. So it's actually really nice to have that extra battery or charging capability with a 3 amp charger. I'm gonna go ahead and open the bike, take it apart, and see, or fold it and unfold it, and let's go ahead and do that next. Okay, to fold or unfold the bike, basically we can turn it around here because I can then show you. You push this here, open up the lever, and it'll open up there. Now we have the bike on, so you always want to make sure that you take out the key before you fold the bike or unfold it. And I usually like to make sure that my pedal is out of the way here. And then I just use my knee to crack it, and you can fold the bike this way. Put it down here. It has a little stand to protect the chain ring underneath. And your bike is now folded. And all we need to do then after is we can undo this and bring this down here. And this is how small the bike actually is at this point. It's really quite compact. This here, and you can, in some cars it'll actually fit in the trunk. Guarantee it'll fit in an SUV, no problem whatsoever. And this is it. So, and then to put the bike back together, basically stick this up here. I like to have it put up that way, and then what I usually like to do is stand here, hold the brake, and the bike kind of puts itself back together. And then I gotta go the other side. Yeah, and just lean it, snap that back in, and the bike is back there. So this is basically the whole folding of it. That's what's really cool about the bike as well. Oh, one other small accessory I'd like to actually add, or just a little thing that they did put on here as well, is that you do have a small USB charging port. So you can, if you need to charge your phone while you're riding along with it, you can actually just go ahead and plug in your phone here, and it'll take some juice from the battery and keep your battery charged along the way. If you don't want this, you can actually unplug it. It does actually come with a cap already on here. This is optional if you want to put it on here, but you can do that. The Yamee bike is also rated to be water resistant through rain, so you can, it's an all-weather bike. It's just a really well-made bike. I mean, Yamee's been around for quite a while. They've just really made some great bikes along the years, but the Fat Bear has by far been one of my favorites as far as features, functionality, and for the price that you get. A dual suspension. I should have really thought about getting one of these a lot earlier, considering what a dual suspension really is like, because it is so smooth. Okay, the bottom weight that this thing can actually hold, it is rated for a payload of total capacity 300 pounds. The other thing I want to point out is that the Yamee Fat Bear Pro has a 2-year warranty. Shipping is free, and make sure you check in the description below for the promotional codes that are offered for this bike as well. All right, lastly, let's go ahead and talk about who the Fat Bear is actually for. This bike is actually, I'm gonna say, it's really versatile. It is, because it's foldable, it's someone who, if you need a bike that actually doesn't need to take a lot of space, it is heavy, okay? I mean, it is a 750 watt bike. Most of them are gonna be a little heavy, and one of the benefits is you can take out the battery, it lightens up pretty good. It'll be a lot easier to lift it up to put it in an SUV or a truck or even a car, the trunk of a car. But because of the way that this thing is tuned, I'm gonna say that even a novice rider or beginner rider, it's because also that it is low, you can put your feet on the ground to get used to it, would actually really have an enjoyable time with this bike. You can even detune it, like bring it down as far as how fast it is, with this very flexible display that we have here. It can really do a lot to actually make you comfortable and not be afraid of a bike that is this powerful. Now, that being said, if you are an advanced rider, like even myself, this is a bike that I would say would be one of the ones that I would be jumping on quite often because of the fact that the dual suspension is super comfortable. So it can be a commuter bike, it can be a mild off-road bike. Now, a lot of people might want to go and take this off-roading a lot, and you have the ability to go ahead and do that, just fine to do that. But you don't have to think of it as only an off-road bike. It'll be a great commuter, especially with a rack that you have here. You'll be able to carry quite a bit. But again, the dual suspension makes this ride comfortable for anybody. Fat tires too, you can lower the pressure of the tires if you want it even softer. Maybe even add a suspension seat post if you want it to be even more comfortable. And of course, if you want to get a super ultra comfy seat, you could do that. This could be a really comfort cruiser kind of feel of a bike. You know, it is a well-rounded everything bike. For the price that you get for this bike, I would say it's definitely worth it. Hydraulic brakes also make it. The motor that actually puts power back into the battery is also a huge benefit. That it also helps slow down the bike a lot faster too. Hydraulic brakes in itself is quite expensive, and it makes it soft to the touch. Bright headlight, integrated tail light, so that also is a big safety feature along with that. But all in all, very solid, and this is not like an unknown brand. Again, Yamee has been around quite a while. It is honestly a premium bike for not so premium price. You can actually, it's a good deal for everything that you get here. Again, I have to say one of the, if not, in fact, I'm gonna say it's the smoothest bike I've ridden thus far to date. There's been other dual suspension bikes that I've had, but none of them actually, for some reason, I feel like I'm actually riding on a cloud with this. Great bike, highly recommend it. Check out the link below. Go to ebikeproducts.com/fatbear to go ahead and be taken to the website for this bike. That is an affiliate link. If you do make a purchase, it doesn't cost you any more, but I do get a little credit back. It does help to support the channel. Greatly appreciate that. Again, that's ebikeproducts.com/fatbear, and check out the bike. Any questions and comments, be sure to leave it below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Real quick.